We often consider the American Civil War to be the first modern war in American history. A modern war that included advanced weaponry, advanced communication, and advanced transportation, namely in the form of railroads such as this one. Now, there's a lot to take a look at when examining railroads and their very, very important role in the Civil War, and that's what we're going to be doing today. My name is Thompson Dasher. I'm a fellow with the Civil War Institute at Gettysburg College, and today I'm standing right in front of Howard Tunnel along the Northern Central Railroad in York County, Pennsylvania. Now, the Northern Central's earliest origins were in the 1830s, when rail workers began laying lines between York, Pennsylvania, and Baltimore, Maryland. Now, the Northern Central itself was established in 1858 as the main route between Baltimore and Harrisburg. This would be the backbone of the economy in the local area, and as well as the entirety of the Mid-Atlantic region. It allowed businessmen in York and Harrisburg to maintain close ties with partners in Baltimore and further into the South. However, this dynamic began to quickly change following the Confederate shelling of Fort Sumter. The railroad became a target of sabotage for Confederate guerrillas who would frequently cross the Mason-Dixon line to carry out raids, destroying tracks, bridges, and telegraph wires. The railroad began to see an increasing number of troops riding its rails, allowing them to travel from northern cities to the front in Virginia. 12-year-old Harry Gladfelder of Seven Valleys took notice to the war's impact on the railroad. Years after the war, he wrote, "As the war progressed, we saw more of its horrors by the passing of trainload after trainload of soldiers going south over the Northern Central Railroad, not in passenger coaches, but in all manner of cars, boxcars, coal cars, stock cars, and gondolas." The growing number of troop passengers also had a profound impact on the local civilian population. While many of the citizens of South Central Pennsylvania had Democratic political leanings, a good number of them were very supportive of the soldiers heading off to war. The interactions between these citizens, particularly local women and the soldiers riding the rails, were quite revealing in terms of gender roles during the American Civil War. One young woman that frequently gifted soldiers with food and gifts wrote that the men were always so appreciative and that she made a point to be as motherly as possible to the men. This is a perfect example of the ways in which women were able to still serve in support of the war while still being within their traditional gender roles as caregivers. Lieutenant James Clark of the 115th New York took notice to the dedication of the local York County women, writing, "Mothers took their last loaf from the oven. Daughters carried jars of jelly and nice preserves from the cellar, and with tearful eyes begged their acceptance. As the cars moved from each station, ladies showered apples, peaches, pears, and oranges among the men like rain." However, not every soldier traveling on the Northern Central Railroad received as warm a welcome. Early in the war, the 12th Massachusetts was moving along the Northern Central towards Baltimore. After stopping in Glen Rock, it took them 5.5 hours to travel only 25 miles between Glen Rock and Hummelstown, Maryland. The colonel of the regiment was Fletcher Webster, a known relative of the famous Daniel Webster of Massachusetts. Webster was growing rather suspicious of the engineer, who certainly was not in a hurry to get his train further south. He asked his men if any of them would be capable of taking control of the train and moving it faster. One of the men that replied was none other than Private Nathan Revere, grandson of the famous Paul Revere. Revere forcibly took control of the engine and made it to Baltimore in record time. Now, this was a relatively minor act of sabotage, but as the war grew on, more major actions were taken against the Northern Central, as Confederates recognized how important it was for the Union Army's war effort and infrastructure. Lieutenant Colonel E.V. White's 35th Battalion of Virginia Cavalry raided the Northern Central Railroad during the Gettysburg Campaign. White's men stormed the Hanover Junction station a few miles to the south of where we are here today. They burned a number of bridges between Hanover Junction and York, severely disrupting the rail lines. However, within the next few weeks, these bridges were able to be repaired due to the expertise of Brigadier General Herman Haupt, an engineer serving in the Union Army. Haupt was able to repair enough bridges, allowing for wounded men to be evacuated to hospitals, such as that in Penn Park in York. The Northern Central continued to serve in this capacity throughout the war, transporting wounded soldiers further from the south up through the north. And also, in November of 1863, President Abraham Lincoln traveled these rails, changing trains further up the line at Hanover Junction to deliver his famous Gettysburg Address. Now, Lincoln would also travel these rails one more time. Unfortunately, this was in the form of his funeral train that made its route north from Baltimore up through into York and then Harrisburg. So I hope this video was helpful in providing a gradual or basic outline of the importance of railroads, particularly the Northern Central, the American Civil War. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned for more videos like this on the Civil War Institute's Facebook page.